Scotland pro-independence. Nicola Sturgeon will be free in second referendum. Nicola Sturgeon is on the brink in her push for a second independence vote after securing a pact with the Scottish Greens, which could allow a referendum bill to be pushed through the Scottish Parliament. A meeting of the Scottish Government Cabinet approved the power-sharing deal yesterday based on similar arrangements the New Zealand Greens have with Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Both parties, who support a second independence referendum, have been locked in negotiations since May after the SNP fell one seat short of an overall majority at the Holyrood election. The new agreement, which still needs to be approved by Scottish Green members and the SNP's National Executive Committee, will see the Greens in national government for the first time in the UK. The draft deal mirrors a similar agreement between Labour and the Lib Dems in the first two terms of the Scottish Parliament when Jack McConnell served as First Minister between 2001 and 2007. Under the deal, two Green MSPs will become Scottish Government junior ministers after a nomination process, taking the number of pre-separation MSPs in Holyrood to 72, 7 more than the 65 needed for a majority. It will not be a formal coalition between the two, but the deal will see them work together on key issues including the climate emergency, economic recovery, child poverty, the natural environment and energy. Green MSPs also would support the Scottish Government on confidence votes, as well as in annual budgets if there is appropriate funding for the shared policy programme. But at the heart of the draft policy programme known as the Bute House Agreement, both parties will commit to holding a second referendum on Scottish independence after the COVID-19 pandemic has passed within the current parliamentary session. It will also see the creation of two new Scottish Government overseas offices in Warsaw and Copenhagen to promote Scotland's interests in Central Europe and the Nordic countries, a move which has been criticised by the Scottish Tories as a waste of Scottish taxpayers' cash. Alongside this, the deal will support the Scottish Government's view that oil and gas licences should be reviewed rather than scrapped. Ms Sturgeon was criticised earlier this month for what was seen as a less than full-throated opposition to the controversial Cambo oil field near Shetland. The field, which could produce more than 800 million barrels of oil, came to the fore after a UN-backed report was described as code red for humanity on climate change, with the Scottish Government urging Prime Minister Boris Johnson to reject the plans. However, both sides could not reach an agreement on 10 policy areas including the role of gross domestic product, GDP, in measuring economic growth, public funding for defence companies, membership of NATO in an independent Scotland and the regulation of selling sex. As the Confidence and Supply Agreement was announced, the Scottish Conservatives called for Patrick Harvey's party to lose their spot at First Minister's questions. Party Chief Whip Stephen Kerr wrote to Holyrood's presiding officer Alison Johnston to request the change. If Ms Johnston did strip the Greens of their slot at FMQs, then only the leaders of Labour and the Tories would be able to scrutinise Ms Sturgeon. Mr Kerr has also pushed for the party to be stripped of the ability to call opposition debates and for Green spokespeople to lose the ability to question ministers following government statements. Leader Douglas Ross branded the agreement as a nationalist coalition of chaos focused on splitting up the country and dividing Scotland with another bitter referendum. He also stressed the deal would punish hard-working families, motorists, and the oil and gas industry. Branding the deal as anti-jobs and anti-business, the Moray MP added, Nicola Sturgeon failed to win a majority, so she's had to turn to the extremist Greens to help her push for INDIAF 2 during an economic crisis. It shows just how weak the SNP feel their case is that they've had to break bread with a party that is even more anti-jobs, anti-business and ideologically extreme than they are. This SNP Green deal will punish hard-working families across Scotland, especially anyone who relies on their cars. Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar said the agreement would be a disaster for Scotland. He added, this straitjacket deal covers all but a handful of issues, with the so-called Greens endorsing the SNP's dismal track record on everything from austerity to the environment. It's hard to believe they will be a strong voice within government when they certainly never were in opposition.